A passport to nowhere? The shocking reality for Russian travelers. Imagine waking up one day and discovering that your passport is about as useful as a chocolate teapot. For Russian travelers, that's becoming a harsh reality. Over 110 countries have essentially slapped a big fat NEET on Russian citizens, imposing severe travel restrictions or outright bans. We're talking about a world map suddenly painted in shades of no-go. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's what happens when... And you'd be right to think that. The world has changed drastically in the past few years, and let's just say, recent events haven't exactly made Russia the most popular kid on the geopolitical playground. But here's the thing, blanket bans on an entire nation's citizens, that's some serious travel constipation. So buckle up, comrades, because we're diving headfirst into the labyrinthine world of travel restrictions. We'll be your cynical, yet surprisingly informative guide through this geopolitical minefield. From the Eiffel Tower to the Great Wall, we'll uncover the shocking truth about where Russian citizens can't go and why. Is it purely political? Are there security concerns? Or is it just a case of the world giving Russia the silent treatment? Stay with us as we reveal the full list of restricted destinations, the surprising reasons behind them, and maybe, just maybe, a glimmer of hope for those yearning to dust off their suitcases.
Alright, let's start with the big kahuna of travel restrictions, the European Union. Now, the EU and Russia haven't exactly been on speaking terms lately, and their relationship status is currently somewhere between it's complicated and we're seeing other people, following what can only be described as Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. And let's be honest, calling it that is like calling a bull in a china shop a slightly clumsy house guest. Most EU nations basically pulled the emergency brake on Russian tourism. We're talking about countries like Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, who are essentially guarding their borders like they're auditioning for a remake of Lord of the Rings. They've slammed the visa door shut, and they're not even leaving the key under the mat. And it's not just those bordering nations. Even countries like France and Germany, known for their love of baguettes and beer, respectively of course, are making it about as easy to get a tourist visa as it is to find a sober Irishman on St. Patrick's Day. The paperwork, the background checks, the sheer bureaucratic hoops you have to jump through. It's enough to make you want to just stay home and binge-watch Cheburashka reruns. And look, I get it. The EU is trying to send a message, and that message is delivered with the subtlety of a sledgehammer to a Fabergé egg. But is punishing everyday Russian citizens really the answer? Or is this just creating more division and resentment? It's a complicated issue, and frankly, I'm not sure a satirical news show is the best place to unpack it. But hey, at least we're asking the tough questions, right?
Across the English Channel, things aren't exactly a cup of tea and a crumpet either. The United Kingdom, known for its charming accents, questionable cuisine and a penchant for historical grudges, has also joined the party, or perhaps more accurately, uninvited Russia from the party. They've essentially rolled out the red tape welcome mat for Russian travelers, and by red tape I mean a bureaucratic labyrinth designed by MC Escher after a particularly strong cuppa. Getting a UK visa for Russians has always been about as easy as teaching a stiff upper-lip royal to do the Cossack dance, but now it's practically impossible. The process is more convoluted than a Shakespearean tragedy, more expensive than a night out with a Russian oligarch, and about as much fun as a root canal performed by a badger. The message is clear. Russian tourists, you are not welcome here. Now, the UK government will tell you it's all about security concerns, and sure, those concerns aren't entirely unfounded, but it's hard not to see this as another brick in the wall of growing animosity between the two nations. And look, I'm not saying we should be rolling out the red carpet for every Tom, Dick and Ivan who wants to visit Buckingham Palace. But surely there's a middle ground between a warm embrace and a bureaucratic headlock, right? Maybe a firm handshake and a polite but firm, "We're watching you, sunshine."
Well, folks, it seems the land of the free and the home of the brave has decided that freedom doesn't quite extend to the right to visit Disney World or scale the Statue of Liberty if you happen to hold a Russian passport. Getting a US visa has always been about as easy as finding a decent bagel outside of New York City for Russians. But now, it's about as likely as seeing a unicorn riding a grizzly bear through Times Square. The American Embassy in Moscow has essentially become a visa wasteland, forcing applicants to embark on a real-life game of Amazing Race just to find an embassy that will even look at their application. It's like trying to win the lottery while simultaneously being struck by lightning. Twice. And don't even get me started on the interview process. Let's just say they make the Spanish Inquisition look like a casual chat over a cup of chamomile tea. Canada, our friendly neighbor to the north, known for its maple syrup, politeness, and surprisingly passive-aggressive hockey dads, has also decided to join the party. They've essentially taken a page out of the American playbook, albeit with slightly more apologies and a side of poutine. The message is clear. Russian visitors, you are about as welcome as a skunk at a garden party.
Ah, Australia and New Zealand, those beautiful lands of sunshine, beaches, and more ways to die from venomous creatures than you can shake a stick at. You might think that being geographically isolated at the bottom of the world would make them a bit more welcoming to outsiders. But alas, even these lands of laid-back surfers and flightless birds have decided to join the chorus of Niet. Both countries have joined their Western allies in essentially saying, "We're full" to Russian travellers, especially those suspected of having even the slightest whiff of government ties. And by government ties, I mean anyone who's ever received a parking ticket from a Moscow traffic warden. The policies are so strict that even your average everyday Boris and Natasha are finding it harder to get a visa than it is to find a sober kangaroo on New Year's Eve. Now, Australia and New Zealand will tell you it's all about protecting their borders and standing in solidarity with Ukraine. And to be fair, they're not wrong. But it does seem a bit ironic that these countries, built on immigration and multiculturalism, are now closing their doors to an entire nation's citizens. It's like going to a potluck dinner and finding out the only thing on the menu is a sad bowl of unseasoned gruel. Not exactly the welcoming feast we were hoping for. Well, folks, it seems the land of the rising sun has decided to set on Russian tourism, at least for the foreseeable future. Japan, known for its ancient temples, futuristic cities, and a slightly unhealthy obsession with all things kawaii, has joined the ever-growing list of countries that have essentially put up a "do not disturb" sign for Russian travelers. They've gone from serving up sushi and sake to serving up a big plate of nope when it comes to Russian visitors. Once upon a time, Russian tourists flocked to Japan to experience its unique culture, marvel at its technological wonders, and probably stock up on those weird and wonderful snacks you can only find in Japanese vending machines. But those days are gone, my friends. Gone like a ninja in the night, or a cherry blossom in the wind. Japan has essentially hit the pause button on visa applications for most Russians, and the few that do get approved are subjected to more scrutiny than a plate of fugu at a Michelin-starred restaurant. South Korea, Japan's neighbour to the west, known for its K-pop kimchi and a slightly less subtle approach to international relations, has also decided to join the party. They haven't gone full-on ban, but let's just say they're not exactly rolling out the red carpet either. Getting a South Korean visa as a Russian citizen now requires more paperwork than a Tolstoy novel, more background checks than a CIA operative, and more patience than a Buddhist monk meditating on a mountaintop.
So there you have it, folks. For Russian travelers, the world has become a much smaller and significantly less welcoming place. With over 110 countries imposing restrictions, the freedom to travel, once taken for granted, is now as elusive as a truthful statement from a politician. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack while blindfolded riding a unicycle during an earthquake. Some of these bans may be temporary, a knee-jerk reaction to the ever-shifting geopolitical landscape. But others, well, they could last longer than a Tolstoy novel and be just as enjoyable. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. There are still a few places where Russian travelers can go without having to jump through hoops like circus performers. Countries that haven't slammed the door shut, that still see the value in cultural exchange and, basic human decency. Places where you can still find a warm welcome, a friendly face, and maybe even a decent bowl of borscht. If you want to know more about these remaining havens for Russian travelers, the countries that haven't succumbed to the global game of travel chicken, then stay tuned for our next episode. We'll be exploring the destinations where Russians are still welcome and hopefully offering a glimmer of hope in these uncertain times. Because as we all know, the world is a much richer, more interesting, and frankly less boring place when we can all experience it together, even if we don't always agree on everything, or anything really. Don't forget to subscribe to the GlobeBit YouTube channel for more updates. We've got plenty of exciting content coming your way, so stay tuned.